Hey guys, it's Kwana back again for another review and recap, and this time it is for The Walking Dead, The Ones Who Live. This is one of my most anticipated shows for the year because I am a huge Walking Dead fan. Yes, I'm an OG girly. Remember when it first premiered, kind of became a prepper a little while the show was going on, ready for my zombie apocalypse, and I stayed with the show for 11 seasons. Now, because of differences between going from cable to streaming, I wasn't always able to watch every season in real time, but I did watch every season of this show. So I started strong and I ended strong, and now we are here with The Ones Who Live. This is the story that reunites Rick and Michonne. And if you fell off from the show, just a little bit of a spoiler because it's necessary to watching this show. In season 9, Rick was killed off, or at least everyone from the Walking Dead family, the survivors, all believed he was dead. In season 10, Michonne leaves to go find him because she gets evidence that he may still be alive, and this is the show that reunites them both. Can we just say reunited? And it feels so good. It is such a refreshing thing to have Andrew Lincoln and Denai Guerra back on our screens. Their chemistry is phenomenal. The longevity of these two actors playing these characters who have been through so much together, for us fans who have been through so much with them. I just got a chance to watch the show, and so I wanted to do a full recap for you guys to let you know what to expect. There will be spoilers in this recap, so hopefully you have an opportunity to watch it. It's on AMC. You can also get it through AMC Plus, but hopefully, if nothing else, if you watch this video prior to watching the episode, hopefully this will convince you to go ahead and watch it, because it's only going to be 6 episodes. To my knowledge, it's just this one off, and if you were a Walking Dead fan, I feel like it's necessary for your mental health and well-being to watch these two characters reunite. If you don't watch any other spinoff, I feel like in my gut, this is the show that you need to see. Okay, so in this video, I'm not only going to be recapping what's taken place on this episode, but I am going to be talking about what happened with these characters in the last, 11 seasons of their arc. But I'm also going to be giving you my predictions for what we're going to get for the remainder of this season. The show is going to air every Sunday at 9 p.m. And hopefully I will be able to come back with one of these recaps and reactions every evening afterward. So if you'd like to join me and you haven't subscribed already, do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. Ring the bell for notifications so that you can come back and join me in this conversation about The Ones Who Live. So without further ado, let's dig into the episode, which starts with a lovely montage of what has been going on in the life of Rick Grimes. Throughout the journey of The Walking Dead, we get glimpses of his life with Carl, his life with Michonne, his life with Judith, his life with the survivors. We get glimpses of what happened at the bridge when the walkers were on the bridge and he had to blow up the bridge in order to save the communities, and thereby potentially blowing up himself, which is what the survivors think happened. Little do they know that he was rescued by Jadis, who calls the CRM and tells them that she has found a bee and they need to come and they need to get him, and this is how he gets rescued. And of course, in that final episode, we see him on the plane. We, the fans, know that he is alive and that he's been rescued, but of course his family and friends, the group of survivors who we have come to know and love, they don't know, and neither does Michonne. Now, following all of that, if you held on with the show, you know that when this all took place, Michonne was pregnant with his child. Yes, we have a little Rick Jr. in the mix, and Rick does not know that. So all he knows is that his wife Michonne and his daughter Judith are out in the world, because of course we do know that the show killed off Carl Grimes. R.I.P. to Carl. And probably the worst mistake that this show's franchise ever made, because he should be leading this franchise at this point, but I digress. And we get to see that Rick has spent the 5 years following the bridge, trying to do everything in his power to get back home. He's under the control of the CRM. The CRM represents 3 cities that are still in existence, Portland and in Omaha, and this secret city that we don't actually know the full location in, but it seems like it's somewhere in the East Coast. Of course, this is where Rick was left off. And this city is the holding ground for all of society that is left. It's got the best army, it's maintained its secrecy, and once you're in, you can't get out, which explains why our boy Rick has not been able to make it back home to his family, which is tragic, and they won't let him go. We get to see him trying time and time again to break free, and it culminates in a bit of a clip at the beginning of the episode that we don't come back to until a little bit later, where Rick is holding a shard of glass up to his neck. Now, if you haven't watched the episode, at the beginning of the episode, we actually got a warning or a disclaimer for the episode about it dealing with issues of mental health. And this episode deals with Rick being incredibly depressed, willing to take his own life because he does not see a way to break free. Because he is literally a prisoner, a slave to the CRM. They will not let him go, simply because once you're in, and there is no letting anyone out, because they cannot risk the secrecy of their community. In the Walking Dead world, we low-key understand this, but as Rick keeps mentioning, a world is not a great world if people aren't free to choose whether or not they want to belong in it. Ironically, Rick has done similar things, similar tactics. We've seen this time and time again in The Walking Dead, but ultimately, because Rick is a good guy, he is the hero of our show, he always gives people their freedom to choose, and he doesn't have his freedom of choice. And it culminates in us seeing him. He is a consignee of the CRM, and he's made to work as a soldier, as a cleanup man, to kill off walkers and be the front lines of any dangerous task. We see him being tethered to one of the soldiers, literally on a leash, made to kill walkers that are burning. Can I just mention the cleverness and the ingenuity of this production design, continuing to give us new iterations of walkers again and again? We have the walkers that have the explosive blood in France in the Daryl Dixon spinoff. Like, we just keep getting new iterations of walkers, and it is completely mind-boggling how they raise the stakes every time to explain why life hasn't gotten back to status quo now that we kind of know about the walkers and we know how to take them out. Well, it's because they keep changing, they keep morphing, they keep evolving into something new. And so just like any disease, we can't keep up with their evolutions. These walkers are burning and they're on fire, and Rick is running through the woods with a hatchet, but he's tethered to a soldier. We see him run, and the hatchet he kills one of the walkers. He leaves the hatchet into the flames. It's burning hot, and then we see him debate whether or not he should cut off his hand, which is the hand that is cuffed to the soldier. And ultimately, he does. He cuts it off in the most mind-blowing moment to me of not only this episode, but one of the top 10 moments of this franchise, because what it fulfills the one-hand man Rick from the comic books. We have been teased this moment time and time and time again on this show. We were teased it during the attack on Alexandria way back in season 5. We were teased it with the arrival of Negan when Rick was given the hatchet, and Negan was basically saying that he was going to cut off Carl's hand, and we thought that Rick was going to have his hand cut off because he says, take me instead. Like time and time again, we thought we were going to get One Hand Man Rick, and we never did, because of course the theory was with the production design that they couldn't have their main character go through the entire series with one hand. It was going to be too difficult. That One Hand Man kind of role ended up going on over to Aaron. Now we finally get to see Rick with one hand. And it makes sense because this show is only going to be 6 seasons. Certainly they can do this for 6 episodes, or I said 6 seasons, so 6 episodes. So that makes a lot of sense. But what a fulfilling moment it was, but also like horrifying. I was literally like yelling at the screen, don't do it, Rick, don't do it, Rick. And he does it. He's running through the woods. Rick is just, oh my gosh, he's just such a survivor. He's such a baddie. He's so tough. He goes through anything. He takes a licking, keeps on ticking. You can't do anything to take this man out. He's endured everything. And he ends up cauterizing the wound inside the burning body of a walker. Like, who else would do that? Rick is still that guy who took Negan out. He's still that guy that ultimately you don't want to mess with. There's one moment that is one of my favorite moments of the show, and it's where Rick, before fully joining the CRM as a soldier, is sitting up against a brick wall after having taken out a bunch of walkers. This is after he's taken out his hand. So this is somewhere around 6 to 7 years after the bridge at this point, and he's leaned up against the brick wall. And I don't know about you, but my mind immediately went to the season finale of season 4, where Rick is attacked by the Claimers. The Claimers attempt to attack and assault Carl, and he goes ham on the main Claimer and tears out his jugular, and he's leaned up against the car after it's happened, and he's got the blood on his face, and it's like ultimate savage Rick. And this moment was, to me, a nod to that. In that moment in time, we had savage Rick back. Rick who was willing to do any and everything to get back to Michonne, to get back to Judith, and it really shows where his state of mind is. But again, we find out that there's this soldier, this general there, Okafor, who keeps trying to recruit Rick. And ultimately, Rick realizes that he can't keep fighting back the system. He's going to have to get in. He's going to have to work within the system in order to escape. And so he joins up, and he and this other soldier named Thorn are kind of paired up together. Thorn also has gone after Okafor and tried to kill him. These people are fighters. They're willing to fight back, and Okafor essentially wants to recruit them because they're A's. And this is where we finally get the reveal of what the A and the B mean. Now, we kind of found out in one of the other spinoffs that Jadis refers to Rick as a B because it was the only way to save him. If she had said he was an A, they would not have saved him. And we find out from Okafor what that means, kind of catching us all up to it. If you're an A, you're a fighter, you're a leader, and they don't take A's. You were the kind of person who doesn't play well with others. You don't exist in society. You're not willing to bend to their rules, and they want people who they can subjugate and they can keep quiet in order to make their society keep going. Rick is an A. Michonne is an A. Most of our survivors are A's. They lie and say he's a B. And we find out from Okafor, Thorn and Rick are both A's, and he wants them to follow under his footsteps, be leaders, ultimately to work to change the CRM. Just the gratification of getting that, because of course throughout The Walking Dead, we kept getting all those allusions to A's. We got the A's in Terminus, and it makes you wonder how much connection the people in Terminus may have had to the CRM. Like, could they have come across the CRM at any point in time? We find out that the CRM works as these 3 cities, but they do have people that they put in the outskirts to help find other people, other survivors, so that they can go and take them in. People like Jadis, who had knowledge of the CRM and had means of communicating with them, even though she lived within the outskirts and she had her own society. Her society of people were not A's, were not B's, would not play well with others. She did not find people in those instances who were able to be survived in the CRM's playground. But she's willing to save Rick because he's important and valuable to her. So she lies. If Jadis, who was the leader of the trash people, ultimately knew of the CRM, it's not outside the realm of understanding or possibility that the people at Terminus were also at some point in time given knowledge to the CRM. And so, or at least that portal, that place might have at some point in time housed members of the CRM. So that A that was on the trailer at Terminus, it makes perfect sense that Rick and his group would go into the A because those are fighters. Perhaps the people who were put in B were people who weren't fighters, who they could easily take hold of and grab when they just needed a quick feed. But the A's were people who they would need to subjugate, and they would need to leave them in there longer to break them down because they were going to fight back. And ultimately, they did fight back. Long live R.I.P. Bob, okay? Because justice for Bob. At all points, it will be justice for Bob, okay? So we go through more of the episode. We see Rick in this awesome training montage. We also get to meet one of Rick's only friends in this area, Esteban Garcia, who works as the waste management, I think, or water management and gas management. And he ends up getting on the inside, learning and getting into upper management, learning how the city works, learning about the drainage systems, learning about where things lead to. Ultimately, he gives Rick some information about where one of the tunnels lead to, and we know that Rick is planning his escape. Now, for a moment, it seemed like this might be an acknowledgement or a nod to what we got at the end of The Walking Dead season 11, where we saw that Rick had left the message in the bottle for Michonne, and we saw that Michonne was looking for Rick. No, this was not that moment. We found out that moment was actually like around year 3, like the third time that he tried to escape. The fourth time he tried to escape was when he cut off his hand. So he actually managed to get pretty far that time and leave a message in a bottle, and Okafor has found out about Michonne. Ultimately, Rick's plan to escape is yet again thwarted when a little girl who is living amongst a group of walkers that Rick is attacked by ends up crying out because he just killed her mother and father, and he has to kill the other walkers to protect the little girl, and it gets him caught and he's not able to escape. That moment, to me, I don't know about you, but it felt like an homage to season 1, episode 1, right? The series premiere, where we see the little girl who's half walker, and well, she's all walker, but her face is half taken off and she's walking around in the bunny slippers and the robe, and she's got the little stuffed animal. You guys remember that moment? I felt like this was an homage to that because we see this little girl, she's also wearing pajamas, it looks to be, or something very similar to pajamas, but she's covered in walker gore. You don't know that she's alive until she screams out. It felt like an homage to that, but also just to who Rick is. Rick hasn't lost who he is in his core. He still sacrifices his escape plan to rescue this little girl, ultimately getting caught by Thorne and finding out that Okafor knows everything about Rick. When he goes to face him, he finds out that Okafor knows about Michonne, he knows about Judith, and he was never going to let Rick leave. And ultimately, they fight each other, but Rick gives in. He realizes that he's not going to ever find Michonne if he dies. So he's going to have to keep playing the game. And we see that it seems as though his spirits are broken in this moment, that he's finally given up. And we find out that more time passes. And this explains how in The Walking Dead history, we went from it being 5 years from the bridge, but we know that since the bridge and since all of that has happened, it's actually been a little bit longer time. It's been about 8 years or so since Rick, since the incident at the bridge and where we are in the world of The Walking Dead. And we basically get that information, that insight. And so now we know exactly why it's been so long, because Rick's not been able to escape the CRM. he goes on this mission with Okafor, and he basically plays the game with him. Oh, duh. I forgot to mention that Terry O'Quinn is in this episode playing a general. We don't see him die, which leads me to believe we're going to get him in episodes 3, 4, or 5, because you don't have Terry show up on your show and not use him, right? Anyway, going back to Okafor and Rick, they're in a helicopter. Again, full circle moment. Rick has learned how to fly a helicopter, and we got those helicopter sightings all throughout the show, which seemed like they might have been hallucinations for Rick, but we now know that they weren't. They were actually the CRM going around and rescuing people, and now Rick is actually flying one of those planes. He and Okafor are in the helicopter talking when they're under attack, and Okafor gets killed. Now, I'm gonna be honest, I was a little bit shocked because they have set this man up to be a villain, even though it does seem like he may have some genuine care and concern for Rick, but they have definitely sent him up to be a villain in this episode. For him to be dismantled so quickly and taken out so fast was a bit of a shock to me. I was not expecting that, I'll be honest with you. They're under attack and the helicopter goes down. And again, Rick survives. Because what? Because he's Rick Grimes, okay? You're not taking Rick Grimes out with no helicopter, okay? That's not how he's going down. I did not know what was going to happen in this sequence as they are running from the helicopter and they are being shot at. Suddenly, we see him being physically attacked by someone who is cloaked in a full-on garment. And at this moment, I've seen glimpses of this outfit, so I knew exactly who this was. And I was like, oh my gosh, don't accidentally kill Rick. Don't accidentally kill Rick. And suddenly she pulls off his helmet and Rick's face is revealed. And then we see that it's Michonne and they are reunited with each other. Oh my gosh, I wanted to leap. I hated that this was the last moment of the episode. Now, a couple of other things. Throughout the episode, Rick is having these dream sequences, and they are probably my favorite part of the entire episode because we get to see Michonne as she was prior to the apocalypse, when she has the braids in her hair. She's an attorney, she's sophisticated, she's sexy, she's well dressed, she's fashionable. They meet at a park. He keeps saying he's lost his way and he doesn't know where to go, and she's giving him advice and she's telling him where to go, and then he's enamored with her and he keeps coming back to her again and again, and we get glimpses of them as perhaps they might have been had he not been married to Lori, had he not had Carl, had they met just out in the world, like he still would have been attracted to her. He doesn't even remember her name in his dreams. It's such a beautiful moment, and it's my favorite part of the episode, just because we always get to see Denai just being like a super baddie, a super soldier, down for the cause, always in these bulky garments. So to see her looking so sophisticated, so suave, so sexy, I was just like, get this woman in a rom-com stat, please and thank you. Like, I need that for my well-being, for my mental health. Prior to any other Wakanda movies, I need her in a romantic comedy, okay? I need this. I don't know who needs to make that happen, but somebody please make that happen. And she needs to look just as good as she looked in those dream sequences. It was chef's kiss, okay? There were just so many, I felt like, fan service moments in this episode, but the episode was also very beautiful, very theatrical. I definitely can see where the vision was when they initially were planning to give Andrew Lincoln a trilogy, a Rick Grimes trilogy, which was originally what Scott Gimple intended for this to be. I am glad that they turned this into a series instead, because I do think that with all of the ire around The Walking Dead and its multiple spinoffs and how it ended, and Andrew Lincoln leaving the show in season 9, that the movies would not have performed well at the box office. So I'm glad that it found its home here at AMC. I definitely think that this is something that the fans needed. I appreciate that, I don't know if you caught this, that Denai and Andy have creator credits and writing credits for the show. I love that for them. It also makes me believe that we are going to get more of these fan service moments where they're not, I don't feel like they're superfluous. I feel like these fan service moments are actually trying to steer the ship in the right direction for the things that fans genuinely missed out on, or that fans were actually wanting from both the comic, from just where the story seemed to go originally and how it diverted. And I think that Andy cares so much about this. Not to say that Scott doesn't, but I think that Andy cares so much about this character, and so does Denai, that they're going to make sure that the fans feel satisfied with how their story ends. And I love that for them. There are, of course, still other Walking Dead spinoffs. There's still the Negan and Maggie storyline that perhaps will get a second season. We know now that Daryl Dixon is getting a second season, The Book of Carol, which, if you don't know Daryl Dixon, that spinoff is filmed in France. And there was a little bit of hubbub because originally they were supposed to be getting a show together, and then it was just Daryl, and now we're going to get Carol, but it's still under the Daryl Dixon umbrella, which makes me believe that we will eventually get them together in a Daryl and Carol season, perhaps. But I'll be honest, I don't know that we will get a happily ever after for Rick and Michonne, but I do think that we will get a satisfying conclusion to their story. As it is right now, there have been no talks or anything, no rumors or anything about this show getting a second season. So I think this is what we're getting. We're getting these 6 episodes, and that's it. But my theories for what we may get, just wishful thinking, fingers crossed, I think we're going to get Giancarlo Esposito, okay, the one of the most amazing actors in the history of the world. I think that we are going to get him in this season. I think that we are going to get Carl, a return of Carl, not in the real world, but I think because they've already established Rick with having these very vivid dreams, I think that we are going to get a Carl moment, which gives my heart little pitter patters, okay, just a little bit, because that storyline and the collapse of Carl as a character was one of the most heart-wrenching moments, I think, even more than the loss of Abraham and of Glenn, because it really should have been him taking on the mantle. I do hope that we get a reuniting of Rick and Michonne with Judith, because I definitely think that if they're going to continue with the franchise, obviously their children would be the ones to carry on that storyline. And how bittersweet it would be if their stories end and they never get to return to their children. I would hate that. So I definitely want to get closure for that. But I can't wait, because next week's episode, we find out what's been happening with Michonne all the time that she's been gone. But of course, we know that they're now together, which means at the bare minimum, in episode 3, we're going to get them together. And we're going to get like the fullness of their reuniting, maybe a little bit more of it in episode 2. But I definitely could understand if episode 2 is just focusing on Michonne with just a little bit of them together at the end. I could definitely understand that. So I'm not going to anticipate us getting like full on Rick and Michonne together, full dialogue, any of those things until episode 3. But here's what I want to know. Let me know down below in the comments what you thought of this episode. Did you enjoy it? Are you an OG fan that has stayed with you through all the iterations? Are you an OG fan who's returning, or are you finding The Walking Dead for the first time? Let's talk about it down in the comments, and I will hope to see you guys next week, okay? I'm so stoked. I'm so excited. And until then, toodles!